Hello, and thanks for tuning in. As always, this is Reverend JR, and today I wanted to take a look at this article I found being linked to from the Genetic Literacy Project, whose tagline is Science, Not Ideology. The article is titled Viewpoint: What New Atheists Get Wrong About Science and Religion. As you can see, it is from the ever-trustworthy Vox, and so that's where we're going to pick up reading it from. Now, I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but on Vox's website, the article is titled, Why Science Can't Replace Religion. John Gray on the myth the new atheists tell themselves. Which one is more clickbait? You decide. I think it is preposterous to say that science can't replace religion. In fact, it seems to have done so very well in the past couple millennia, with all the medical advances and things we have, which are not attributable to religion. But let's move right into the meat of this. The article begins, I'm what you'd call an agnostic. Well, there you go. As he says, he doesn't know if God exists, but the question is probably unanswerable. Well, this is not exactly true. The question has a pretty clear answer. And the answer is that if there is a God, it's clearly none of the ones described in any religion so far. So, he continues, I'm content to live in the uncertainty. You know, if I thought there were a God, or even if there were the pretty solid chance that there were a God, I would not be content simply to live in that uncertainty, because the problem would present itself that I believe there could be one, and that it might do very bad things to me if I don't live the way it wants me to. Imagine if you heard an anti-vaxxer, for example, saying, I don't know if vaccines are good or not, but I'm willing to live with the uncertainty. And then they catch polio. You can be agnostic toward it all you want. It doesn't change the fact that it is or is not. As Penn Jillette put it in a good video once, if you're agnostic, you're probably atheist, because if you don't know, then you probably don't believe. The article continues. That's probably why I've always found the so-called new atheists misguided in their critiques of religion. Well, for one, the term new atheist wasn't coined by the so-called new atheist. It was coined by religious people who think that new atheism is somehow different from old atheism, but it isn't. The article continues. New atheism is a literary movement that sprung up in 2004, led by prominent authors like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens. Well, yes, they were vocal atheists, and in fact, at least one of them still is. But there's nothing new about it. Although they were right about a lot of things, the article continues, the new atheist missed something essential about the role of religion. I don't think they did, though. The role of religion seems to be giving people the drive to behead others who simply do not believe the same as they do. The article continues, for them, religion was just a proto-science. No, if you've listened to any of those people or others that get grouped into the new atheist, you'll see that they believe, generally speaking, that religion is just a form of myth that may or may not have been designed to describe how the world worked, but in almost every case prescribes authoritarian principles for governance, and is designed almost exclusively to control people. The mythos surrounding the science portion of it tends to be secondary. Continuing the article, our first attempt at biology and history and physics. But religion is so much more than a set of claims about the world, and you can't fully understand if you don't account for that. Don't account for what, though? It is claims about the world, and there is very little else involved in religion. Religion claims, let's use the Abrahamic ones, that a God created the world, that a God endowed humans with a soul, and so on. There isn't a whole lot more to it than that. They claim that these things happened because a creator caused them to happen, and there's nothing else to really account for. Continuing, John Gray is a British philosopher whose latest book, 7 Types of Atheism, explores the history of atheism. And we're not going to go there for the purposes of this article. It's both an affirmation and a critique of atheism, written by an atheist who is aware of all its contradictions. There are no contradictions in atheism, though. It simply means you do not believe in a god. Some people are more vocal about it than others. Some people still believe in other ludicrous things. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe in a god, you're an atheist, and that, again, includes agnostics. The article continues. Gray has been one of the most forceful critics of the new atheists since they first emerged on the scene. No, he hasn't. I can think of countless others who have been much more vocal, including those who have actually debated the people they claim are the new atheists, such as Dawkins, Harris, and so on. And his new book continues in that vein. So what we have here is actually also a form of new atheism, or new agnosticism, which seeks to do all of the things that new atheism allegedly seeks to do. According to Wikipedia, new atheism is a term coined in 2006 by the agnostic journalist Gary Wolfe to describe the positions promoted by some atheists of the 21st century. This modern-day atheism is advanced by a group of thinkers and writers who advocate the view that superstition, religion, and irrationalism should not simply be tolerated, but should be countered, criticized, and exposed by rational argument wherever their influence arises in government, education, and politics. Exactly the sort of thing the agnostic and atheist who wrote this article are in fact doing. Should I call them new agnostics and new atheists, or not? Should I call the Christians who do the same thing new Christians? No, I think not. I think the term without the condescending new works just fine. And then the article continues. I called him up to talk more about his view on the movement and about religion and science more generally. And continuing, Gray told me that the new atheists are shaped by myths of their own. No, they're not. And that their failure to understand or acknowledge that is one of the biggest flaws of their movement. As you'll see, this is a lightly edited transcript, so maybe he'll actually point out one of the myths that new atheists, so-called new atheists, are putting forward. Don't hold your breath, though. You might suffocate. He also said that atheism is far more interesting when it seriously asks what it's like to live in a genuinely godless world. Yes. And if you listen to any of those new atheists, you'll see that's exactly what they do. And as it says, a lightly edited transcript of their conversation follows. So let's just jump into it. Sean Illing. My complaint with the new atheists has always been their insistence on treating God as a purely epistemological question. I don't think you can make sense of religion if you only see it as a system of beliefs. How else can you possibly make sense of it, Sean? Is what I would ask, but I'm not stood in front of him. In the book, you make a similar point in a slightly different way, saying that the human mind is programmed for survival, not truth. And I'm curious what you mean by that. I mean, in one regard, that is true. We are programmed for survival. And if you think lightning happens when Zeus is angry, you're much less likely to think there's a way to avoid it than if you understand that it's electrical discharge, and that through things like not becoming a grounding rod, you can avoid it, you see. So yes, we are programmed for survival, but the truth helps us survive very well. And if you're trying to tell me the idea that Zeus or Thor sends down lightning bolts or creates the thunder is somehow something other than a belief system, then you're going to have a fun time convincing me. John Gray. The human mind is like every other animal mind. More or less, I guess. If Darwinism is right, and I think it's the best approximation we have to the truth about how humans came into the world, it's not Darwinism, it's evolution, you daft prick. Then all aspects of the human animal are shaped by the imperatives of survival. Yes, that's mostly correct. But our selection pressures are very different to other animals, you see. That includes the human mind, he continues, so there's a deep-seated tendency in the human mind to see the world in ways which promote human survival. Yes, that's pretty much correct. We are human-centric in most of our dealings. Most animals are also animal-centric in their dealings, he continues, and the tendency to obsess over reason and rationality overlooks this fact. No, John, it does not. Reason and rationality allow us to live longer. They allow us to do away with the myth of the old times and update it so that instead of thinking that Jesus will cure our polio, we allow ourselves the reason and rationality to figure out the underlying cause for it and develop a vaccine for it and wipe it out. You see, we can do that, John, even if a myth or a system of beliefs cannot. I don't need a book's validation that a vaccine works, because the vaccine will work either way. I don't need a myth to tell me that Loki is the one who lies and deceives people, taking agency away from the people who actually do lie and deceive. He continues, many of our most important ideas or conceptions aren't really intellectual solutions to intellectual problems. But I say nay, nay. One of our most important conceptions, or important ideas, is pasteurization, so we kill the germs in the milk we drink. Another very important one is electron theory, so that I can sit here and make videos with electrical machinery, and you can read incredibly stupid interviews by people on the internet. All things we wouldn't have if we believed the myth of the olden times, that lightning just happened to be a god's anger. He continues, I think that's what you had in mind when you said earlier that the new atheist irritated you because they treated the idea of God as a kind of theoretical or epistemological question. Which God, John? Yahweh? Zeus? Thor? Isis and Ra from Egypt? Tiamat? Zoroaster? Or any of the other countless gods? The idea of which god? Or you mean just a god thing in general, like a deist might present? Because as far as we can tell, it is only hypothetical, because no one's been able to demonstrate anything like one. I have no reason to treat it as anything else, in the same way I have no reason to treat a unicorn as though it exists, or a leprechaun, or the Bigfoot, or a brownie monster, or pixies. I have no reason to accept them as anything other than hypothetical until you can provide evidence they exist. Unless you're saying it's also useful to believe in unicorns, and Reiki, and Ki, and life energies, and homeopathy, even with no evidence. There's literally no difference until you can demonstrate they are real. And again, this is what makes it a belief set, and not actual observable truth. John continues, there's this silly idea that we have no need for religion anymore because we have science. But that's an incredibly foolish notion, since religion addresses different needs than science, needs that science can't address. He said, not realizing that there are religions that do not have a god, like Buddhism and humanism and so on. Nihilism, for example, which has no belief system at all, but is still a religion. I'm curious to see if he tells us what needs that religion addresses that science cannot address. But I have a feeling he's not going to. And so Sean throws him another softball. I think that's right, but you can unpack that a bit so it's clear what you mean? I didn't type this, my apologies. John Gray continues then. For example, there are still people who treat the myths of religion, like the Genesis story, as some kind of literal truth, even though they were understood by Jewish thinkers and theologians of the time as parables. That's the problem when you believe it's the literal word of God, and then you say, oh, well, he didn't really mean that. You can't just go back in time and say what you thought they meant, or how you thought they interpreted it. Some of them may have only accepted it as parable, but the people who originally wrote it definitely believed that's what it was, because those stories are stolen from older myths, and the people who believed those myths definitely believed that's how the world began. John continues, Genesis is not a theory of the origins of the world. It's not obsolete primitive science. Yes, it is, John. It's not a solution to the problem of knowledge. Religion isn't like that. Who are you to say? No true Scotsman, no true Scotsman! I spot a no true Scotsman! I like how he's telling everyone how they believe, rather than understanding that people are telling the truth when they say they believe something. John Gray is the only person in the world who can't be told how he believes, apparently. Religion isn't like that. Religion is a body of practices, of stories and images, whereby humans create or find meanings in their lives. Or, in some cases, it isn't. People also find meaning in their lives without religion, And why are you discrediting all those people who can say, there is no bigger meaning? My life is simply my life, and I'm living it to try to make the world a better place while I'm here. And I don't need some higher power or some series of beliefs outside of nature to justify that. You call yourself an atheist, John, but I'm not sure you quite understand that a lot of us atheists do not need religion to find meaning in our lives. We can find meaning from the people around us. We don't have some fundamental underlying meaning that needs to be there for us to survive. We can accept that we happen to exist, and perhaps that gives us meaning or whatever, but it's not religious. It doesn't rely upon creation stories and books of law and all of these other things that come with religion. The idea that you should be on the path of least suffering so that you can enter nirvana. I don't need nirvana. I don't need the reward of heaven to do good, to provide meaning in my life. And you're just here saying, well, nope, you're wrong. You have to have religion to do that, because science and just understanding nature can't do that for you. And that's incredibly offensive and insulting. John continues. In other words, it's not a search for explanation. So if it's not a search for explanation, then why are you claiming it is used to explain the meaning of our lives? Even if everything in the world were suddenly explained by science, we would still be asking what it all means. No, you just said science would have explained that. And again, you're presuming there has to be some special meaning. You presume there has to be a reason for it. And this is why I do not believe you are actually an atheist. Because most atheists I know understand that there doesn't have to be a meaning for it. There doesn't have to be a special purpose outside of ourselves. We happen to be born, we happen to die, and it doesn't mean anything other than the meaning we give it. This is not a difficult question. He continues, that's where religion steps in. No, it doesn't. I can ask what it all means, and I don't need religion to step in. All it means is that the universe exists and we happen to be in it. The fact that you think everyone needs religion to explain everything, because we're all human and we all need that, doesn't jive. Because a lot of us don't. And if you're saying that false meaning is better than the actual meaning, and that we need a false meaning that isn't described by anything other than our own brains, then you're also saying you don't need religion to find that meaning, because you can still find it on your own, regardless of what those books say, and regardless of what any organized sort of religion would tell you. Because at that point, you're justifying it as a meaning within your own context in the first place. Anyway, I think I've said all I feel like saying on this particular article. If you enjoyed that, click the thumbs up. The link to the thing will be down below. If you want to know how to get your name on the screen, check out my Patreon. And as always, this has been Reverend JR, signing off.